Dinesh D'Souza is here with us today to discuss the presidential election and to promote his amazing new film, Vindicating Trump, which was released in theaters back on September 27th. I've watched the entire movie myself, and believe me, it is fantastic. We also have some great news to share as well, because the film is now available on streaming platforms and it's even available as a book. Vindicating Trump explores the polarizing figure of President Trump, delving into his life and leadership to challenge the mainstream narrative of him as a potential tyrant, instead highlighting the lawlessness of his political adversaries. Through interviews with Trump himself and key figures like Laura Trump and Alina Habba, and dramatic recreations of strategic war rooms, the film argues that Trump's enemies, not Trump himself, embody the true threat to American democratic principles. Here's a clip from the film.
We were all about democracy, and that's what we're about. And, you know, their theme is, oh, Trump will subvert democracy, but they're the ones that are going to subvert democracy, and that's what they're doing all the time.
I mean, did you do censorship? No. Did you lock up any leading Democrats? No. I mean, there were people chanting for Hillary to be locked up, but you didn't lock her up.
Let's defeat her in November.
But with Hillary as an example, I thought it would be a terrible thing, actually. What she did was terrible. What Biden did was terrible. What they all did. But I never would even think of doing that. I could have done it, and we had them dead to right, but wouldn't it be a terrible thing? And yet now, what they've done is they've opened up a box, a Pandora's box, that is a very dangerous thing.
Vindicating Trump.
Joining us now to discuss is author and filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I want to say congratulations again on this movie. It was just terrific to watch. I also want to ask, what inspired you to write a book about it as well?
Well, you know, Riley, the book movie one-two punch has become a little bit of my signature. I've been doing that now for a number of years. I did my first film on Obama with an accompanying book. My book, America, came alongside a film, Hillary's America. And it made sense, I think, partly because books and movies do two different things. The book is more like a legal argument. It has references. It goes in some ways deeper than the film. But the film is very cinematic. It's very entertaining. It's told in the form of a story. And of course, it has a very riveting one-on-one with Trump, where I think you see a different dimension of Trump than you often see in typical interviews. And I think people will come not only to a fuller understanding, but I think also a fuller appreciation of the man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to ask you as well, because it is an interesting thing to have this book coming out as well to make the case for him. So what is the book, how is it structured? And really, if you could just walk us through it, what can readers expect to find in that book?
The book is built around an argument that traces its roots to Lincoln. In Lincoln's so-called Lyceum speech, Lincoln predicts that if America is ever going to be destroyed, Lincoln says it will not come from abroad. It will come from within. But how? Lincoln says, well, you're going to see a rising tide of lawlessness in the society, and then a tyrannical regime. Lincoln says, I don't know, it could be a Caesar, a Napoleon, maybe a kind of Alexander the Great, will exploit this lawlessness to subvert the foundations of our republic. Now, the Democrats will look at that and say, oh, yes, of course, Lincoln was pointing and warning us about Donald Trump. So the theme of the book is, yes, the threat of tyranny is all too real, but is it coming from Trump? Or is it coming from the other side? Now, it's very interesting to me that the left keeps calling Trump a dictator. Let's notice, for example, that that's not a charge that they've typically used against other Republicans. They never called Reagan a dictator, as I remember. They would call him a washed-up movie actor or this or that, but not a dictator. So it's very important to notice that they make this particular accusation against Trump, and the book explores why would they do that. They know he's not a dictator. He was in power. He didn't do dictatorial things. So why use that particular allegation against him?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that as well, because it seems like the anger about Trump, and we see this in the movie, right? We go through some of these scenes where you see the mainstream media's response to his election and his, jumping into the race, right, and coming down the escalator. I do wonder, though, what do you think it is that's unique to Trump that really drove the mainstream media to pure insanity, and even his opponents? Because as you just said, we've had division in this country for a long time. There's been a lot of hostilities, and especially toward Republicans and Republican presidents, Reagan, George Bush, absolutely. But what we're seeing here seems to be different. It seems to be heightened, it's elevated, it's more targeted at him specifically and his family, his business partner. So I just don't understand, what is it specifically that's unique to him that really just warrants this response from them? I mean, what is it exactly?
First of all, I'd like to say that Trump does have a larger than life dimension. There is a certain powerfulness about him that I haven't seen in anyone else in my adult life. I put it to Trump this way in a question I ask him in the film. I say to him, look, they keep saying that you called for an insurrection. Now, there's no evidence that you did that. You never said, go inside the Capitol on January 6th and take over the place and stop the count. None of that. But I said, guess what? Had you called for an insurrection on January 6th, there would have been one, a real one. Far exceeding the one we saw. And moreover, if you called for an insurrection now, there would be one. Now, let's pause for a moment and think of how strange this is, because if anyone else that I can think of called for an insurrection, imagine if Marco Rubio called for an insurrection, like 2 veterans would show up, right? Even if Kamala Harris called for an insurrection, it would be a public joke, it would be a laughing matter. But with Trump, the left knows that he really does have this kind of power. And my question to Trump was, of course, are you aware of this? And how do you intend to use this kind of power? So the point is that the left uses an accusation that's very cunning against Trump. He does have some of the dimensions of a Caesar, although I think he has shown that he has no intention of using his power in an exploitative or dictatorial way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the narrative there just completely falls apart after we saw him in office from 2017 through 2021. We saw what he looks like as a president and how he's going to govern and really what his priorities are and his approach to the position. So it's just completely nonsensical. But I do want to ask you, since this upcoming election is just about 3 weeks away, I can't believe it. What do you make of everything that's going on right now with this latest media blitz from Trump and from Harris?
The mainstream media has been trying to concoct a new and improved Kamala Harris. It's quite comical to watch. And it's based upon, I think, their recognition that for a lot of middle-of-the-road voters, this is the only information they get. They're not exposed to conservative media. They just get the propaganda. And so the propaganda is always going to work up to a point, and then it slowly starts to fall apart as people realize, first of all, that Kamala Harris is in fact a complete dummy. And all the camouflage can't hide that fact. Meanwhile, Trump is not the ogre that they try to make him out to be. He's actually a genuinely nice guy. I mean, look at it this way. Trump is not averse to bullying other bullies. But on the other hand, you will never see him bully a waiter or a cab driver or a doorman in one of his hotels. He's very nice and gentle with ordinary people and shows a genuine curiosity about their lives. So people are getting to see Trump in all his dimensions. I think the movie helps to complete that picture. And as they see him, they realize all this stuff about Trump being a threat to the Republic. No, he's not a threat to the Republic. He's only a threat to you.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you said that as well, because he does pose some threat, but to the Democrat Party's communistic authoritarian agenda. It's complete projection, what we're seeing here, where they accuse him of wanting to throw people in concentration camps or destroy the Constitution or make himself a dictator on day one and assume complete control of the military and weaponize that for his own gain. It's complete projection, and it really is quite telling about what's actually happening in this country. I can agree there is a threat to our republic here, but it's not coming from Trump. He's the only person, it seems like, who's actually willing to take a bullet, so to speak, to save this place and to run for America, really, and on American principles. But I also think you're right here, because the propaganda, it's wearing off. The honeymoon period, it seems to be wearing off. I think even people in Kamala's own camp are starting to see that she's just not a good candidate. And that brings us to this Polymarket poll, which is so interesting to me. I mean, when you look at this actual betting predictor matchup online, you see Trump with a 20% lead. That is historic. That is unprecedented. So I don't know know what's going to happen, of course, on Election Day, but I do think this poll is very encouraging. What do you think about this? Do you think it accurately reflects the state of the electorate right now?
Yes, I think that when you talked earlier about the kind of imaginary of Trump as this threatening and scary figure, Trump has demonstrated that there's nothing tyrannical about him. Here's a line from my book. I say, if Trump was a dictator, he was truly the worst dictator in the history of the world, because dictators control the police agencies of the government. Dictators control the military. Dictators don't leave office. So if Trump was a dictator, he has shown none of the sort of capacity of a dictator to do those things. But turning to the Polymarket poll, these betting polls are very highly predictive. It doesn't mean that Trump is running 20 points ahead of Harris. What it really means is that people are putting their money where their mouth is. If you just approach a guy on the street, who's going to win the election? Well, people will give you all kinds of sort of unconsidered opinions based on nothing. But you ask a guy to bet $100 on something, and he's going to spend some time thinking about it, studying it with an intensity that you won't find in his other pursuits. So that's why betting polls have proven historically to be quite accurate, because people are putting their money behind their bets.
Yeah, they certainly are, and there's certainly a lot at stake in this election too, so I think that's got to be an added factor. I mean, it seems like turnout's already massive, early voting is already starting in tons of states, and we're seeing such a huge wave, really, of turnout, and I hope that we can sustain that surge the ballot boxes, and keep it up, because we have so much here that's really at stake, including our financial future. And when it comes to that point about the economy, no matter what Kamala says or does, she just can't seem to win people over, and most people seem to be going with Trump's policies were better for me, I was doing better, business was better, I could retire, I could save, I had more, purchasing power. So I think that this is extremely interesting to see the difference, the huge delta between what people think about Kamala maybe being a president just in abstract, and then when there's real skin in the game, you have a vested interest in the future of the country. So having said that, we are coming up against a break, Dinesh. So what are your final thoughts here about the book, and where can people pick it up?
The movie and the book have the same title, Vindicating Trump. The book is available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the usual places. The movie website is vindicatingtrump.com. The movie is now streaming on multiple platforms, so click and watch. And there's also DVDs available from multiple places. If you get the DVD from Salem Media, they will throw in a DVD of my previous film, Police State, so it's like 2 for the price of 1. But vindicatingtrump.com is a good one-stop shop to get the DVD, stream the movie, and get the book.
Of course. Thank you so much. I will be getting a copy as well for myself. But Dinesh, I really appreciate your time and all of your hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.